Welcome to WizeUp. I'm Paul Arthur. Today I want to talk about Frances Widdowson. She's, of course, the professor who seems to get in all kinds of trouble these days, recently arrested at the University of Lethbridge. I want to talk about the right to free speech and academic freedom. This is actually a really important topic. It really, I think, matters to all of us in Canada and beyond. Okay, so before we jump into that, a quick reminder to hit subscribe if you're watching online. And again, joining us today is Dr. Frances Widdowson. She's a former Mount Royal University professor, often labeled as being racist, hateful, residential school denier, pick your term there. And she has been visiting a number of universities, ongoing here to engage in conversations with students and anyone else who wants to talk. Unfortunately, the typical response is a kind of a mob mentality. Lots of yelling, insults, beating drums, making lots of noise, even violence at times. And we can go into more details here in the interview. I want to steer you to her website, wokeacademy.info, wokeacademy.info. And that'll give you some interesting things to chew on there. All right, so for sure. Good to have you with us, Frances.
Thanks for having me on.
Always interesting to have you on, for sure. So you just recently got yourself arrested at the University of Lethbridge while sitting in a cafeteria. The cafeteria, as I recall, seeing the video, was mainly empty. It looked like a quiet one-on-one conversation with a student, I assume. Can you describe what happened?
It was actually a member of the public. I was planning on meeting a student there, whose name was Samar Paul, who had contacted me, but it turned out he was a mole getting information. He wasn't I don't think he was a student, but he was just trying to see when I was going to be coming so he could report me to the authorities.
Oh,
so they could arrest me. So there's another kind of glitch in the whole system. Yeah, so it was Edward. When I was the University of Lethbridge, Leroy Littlebear, who is the vice provost of indigenization, and the president sent out a letter saying they were going to smudge where I was on February 4th to get out all the negative energy. I made an announcement online saying I'd be coming down to have coffee with any student who wanted to talk to me, because I didn't want the University of Lethbridge to be able to assert such a totalitarian position that they were asserting. So when that happened, I got this reply, and then I got contacted by Edward. And so I decided to go down there at the end of April, because I'd said I'd be coming in March and April. And as I was going down with Morgan Johnson, who's an independent journalist, and Kathy Drake, I got this email from a faculty member from the University of Lethbridge who said that he had just got a notice from the Faculty Association saying that I posed a serious health and safety risk to all members of the Lethbridge community, and that people should report, if they saw me, they should report this to their dean to ensure that they were protected, and so on. This really, really ridiculous email. And so that led me to go down. Kathy went in first and had some interactions with security, and then Morgan and I were just sitting in my car in front of the, it's the campus directory sign, so you're not actually in campus. We were just talking about things, and the police pulled up with 2 paddy wagons behind us and told me that I was a trespass order and I wasn't allowed on the campus, and that if I stepped out of my car, there would be serious problems and so on. And I was just said, well, I'm not intending on going in there today. And then we left, and we stayed overnight, and we announced that we're going to be coming in now the next day.
Oh, so the next day you actually announced, you sent an email to the university?
I just put out a press release saying we were coming in.
Oh, okay.
To do, because I have this, I had this exercise called spectrum sheet epistemology, which I'd put on little coasters that you could just put on the table so they wouldn't have to take up space in the public area, because there have been criticisms that I had commandeered public space the last time I'd been there. So I was doing like the most like low-key thing I could possibly do. And then I got Mocha Bezagran who's an independent journalist, to come down from Calgary to film it. I had my body cam on, and we went in, and I thought I would be arrested before I actually got in to the cafeteria. No one did anything. I thought, whoa, University of Lethbridge is standing down. They're going to allow me to do this because they're letting me in. But why would they let me in the building if they thought I was this horrible safety risk and so on? And so we walk in. I see Edward there. I sit down with Edward. I bring my coasters out. I'm talking to him about and Samar Paul, the student I was supposed to be meeting, had just called security and got them to intervene. The security guard came up and was telling me I couldn't be there because I had a trespass order. But I was telling him, you don't have to enforce the order. This happened at Thompson Rivers, where they gave me a trespass order, and then they just hung back and watched to see if I was doing anything that was unsafe. And when I didn't, they just let everything go ahead.
Oh, interesting.
So I was telling him, this has happened. Why don't you just hang back and see if anything unsafe happens? And he said, no. He was under orders from the University of Lethbridge administration to remove me. And if I wouldn't leave, he was going to call the police to have me removed. And I said I wasn't going anywhere. I was explaining to him everything I was doing. And then the police came in and they asked me to leave. And I said no. And then I said, and then they handcuffed me. So that I was surprised about that. They handcuffed me and dragged me out and put me in the paddy wagon. And then they drove me to my car and then gave me a $600 ticket for trespass, which I'm fighting with the Justice Center for Constitutional Freedoms.
Wow. Okay. So they didn't actually take you to jail or anything like that, or even to the police station. They just removed you, put you in the paddy wagon, handcuffed you, and then said, okay, have a nice day, and here's a $600 fine. Wow. Okay. I mean, wow. Okay. So there's no other charges other than the ticket, right? There's no threats of putting you in jail at this point.
Yeah, but it kind of escalates, right? So the more they do what they're doing, the more I fight them in terms of what's happening. And people are saying online that, well, what did she expect? She got a trespass notice and she disobeyed it. But the main point is that the trespass notice came from the February 4th mob scene that occurred, where Tony Hall, the professor emeritus from University of Lethbridge, had invited me to do this session. My husband, Albert, and his wife, Helena, were there. We were having a very low-key collegial kind of thing. And the University of Lethbridge sent out an email saying a controversial figure was on campus with very upsetting and disrespectful views. And that caused this mob of students to find me and to engage in unbelievable behavior of assaults, property damage, theft, massive intimidation, saying that they hoped that our ears would bleed, banging drums right by my head so that my eardrums would be damaged. That's what the University of Lethbridge did. And instead of going after all those people who had acted in such a reprehensible way, they decided to give me the trespass notice. And that is an absolute outrage that is obviously going to be fought in this situation. But even worse, Leroy Littlebear, who's the vice provost of Lethbridge, University of Lethbridge, said that the students had done a fantastic job in neutralizing me. Patrick Wilson, a professor of anthropology, said he was proud of how the students had acted. These are faculty members and administrators at the University of Lethbridge who are egging on the students in shutting down very important conversations.
So you bring up a very, very good point. I mean, we need to just think this through. What are our universities today teaching their students? Okay, what's coming down from the top, preparing the next, future leaders of our nation, right? That is troubling to me. I mean, I understand that, of course, any university, and the U of L here in particular, they don't want chaos on their property, right on their campus. But is it a self-inflicted wound? I would suggest it seems that way, right? The whole shouting down, refusing to debate, and in this case, physical violence, pushing, shoving, stealing your backpack, these kinds of things. We think, okay, universities are well known for DEI, right? Diversity, equity, inclusion, tolerance. So what happened to that? So somebody dared to come on their campus and engage in conversation, debate, and guess what? So your opinion didn't agree with the opinions of the students gathered around you. So let's see. Well, that would make for diversity, wouldn't it? So that would make for tolerance, and it would make for inclusion if they actually allowed you to speak. But 3 strikes on that. So where are we going with that?
Yeah, and it's like diversity means proportionate representation of various groups, designated groups. And if those groups feel uncomfortable or unsafe when they hear a view expressed that disagrees with them, the argument is that view should be removed so that they can feel that they belong at the university. And this is just an absolutely terrible way to go about running an academic institution, where you should want to have your views challenged. That's how you find out whether you are mistaken in your beliefs. And even if the views that you're faced with are not correct, you gain a better understanding through your own position by having it clash with sort of the contrary position. So the whole pedagogy that is supposed to be unfolding in academic institutions is being completely subverted by the activists who are in control of universities.
Well, it's a form of bullying is what it is. Now, our universities and our schools, correctly, have programs against bullying. We're trying to educate people, but maybe time to look in the mirror on this one. Where's the bullying coming from?
Exactly. These people were unbelievable bullies. And actually, I wrote out a sign after they had, I was at a table being guarded by police, and I noticed that Tony was writing on this pad, and I thought, that's a great idea, because they're so loud I can't talk, but I can write on the pad. So I'm writing these George Orwell quotes on this pad, and this enraged these students. They just got completely enraged. They ripped the tablecloth off. They threw the table down the room. They took all Tony's papers and threw them all over the place. And at some point I wrote on this card, "Bullies can't win." And I held up this sign to show all these students like what they were doing, and this was just complete bullying and intimidation. Mm-hmm. And those students needed to hear from their professors and the administration that this behavior is completely unacceptable. And instead of hearing that, they were told they're doing a great job. So you can imagine next time you go in there what you're going to do. And then they claim it's a safety threat when they've caused the safety threat, the University of Lethbridge.
Yeah. That's very problematic in my mind anyhow. If we could imagine for a moment, now I don't think there's anything like this in existence in Canada, but let's say we had a publicly funded university that actually had a position that agreed with yours on the Indian residential school system, okay? Mm-hmm. And so now you have, let's say, some First Nations leaders come along on that public campus, and they said, no, you're wrong. Here's the facts as we see them. And so there should be a good public debate, but instead they were surrounded by mobs of students who thought like you do, Dr. Widdowson, and they started pushing and shoving and stole backpacks, etc. How would they feel? Would they change anything in how they handle things? Just saying.
Yeah, they would just clamp down on that. It would all be about, this is a terrible threat to free speech and academic freedom. That would be their position. So they're not being sincere. They're using policies. They're weaponizing the Occupational Health and Safety Act which is what I was talking. I did have a meeting with Minister McDougall about this.
Oh, okay.
I guess it was 2 weeks ago.
Yeah.
He said he was going to talk to the University of Lethbridge to try to reach a mutually agreed upon solution to this problem. But, what must happen is the University of Lethbridge must hold an event with myself and Tony Hall, who was badly defamed as well by the university, and Aaron Peat, who is the chief of the Hope Band, who is one of the few Aboriginal leaders who's open to having these kind of discussions, and the university can invite whomever representative they want.
So you're saying the minister is saying he's going to talk to the university about doing this?
Yes.
Oh,
and
that would be.
I said that's the bare minimum. I will accept nothing less than that.
Absolutely, they should. Well, I'm really glad to hear that the minister here is going to put that forward. We'll see how the university responds to that. By the way, on your website, so again, if you're just tuning in here, our guest is Dr. Frances Widdowson. wokeacademy.info is the website, wokeacademy.info. And on that site, you have posted an email exchange there between U of L officials about your public engagement on early February there with the students, and of course, subsequently shut it down by the mob there. So do you want to just briefly kind of go over what you learned from those emails there?
Yes. So we got productions. This is the good thing about going to court, is although they drag you out for years on end, they have to release emails that mention you. Mm-hmm. And there's one email exchange, the best one. There's other ones too, but they're not as damning. Anyway, this one is between Michelle Helstein, who's the provost, who's the highest academic position at the university, and Patrick Wilson, who's an anthropology professor from the University of Lethbridge, and he's been actively involved in censorious kinds of promotion. He was involved in the 2023 episode as well. Anyway, he sends Helstein this email which says that I should be banned. I should have been banned from campus. Like, why was I there on February 4th having this thing with Tony Hall, which was an actual academic exercise, because Wilson said that without any evidence that my views were not academic and actually amounted to hate speech. But he has provided no evidence for this, which is an incredibly irresponsible thing for an academic to do. And then Helstein writes back in an unbelievable email where instead of schooling Professor Wilson in the value of academic freedom and open debate, actually gives three possibilities that could happen, which are all in the totalitarian side of this issue, which are: one, they could do what Patrick Wilson wants, which is to ban me. Two, they just don't respond at all because they don't want to give me a platform for my, horrible views. And number three, they should encourage everyone to go and accost me and show me how wrong I am. Those were the three positions that Helstein thought were valid. No mention of the importance of considering viewpoints different than your own, even a recognition that I am the foremost academic expert on the Kamloops case in Canada, and I know a lot about this issue, have several books that have been published and so on. No mention of that, just a complete delegitimization of my position as an academic. And the minister must step in and pull funding from the University of Lethbridge if it does not hold this event, because that's the only thing the University of Lethbridge will listen to.
So I know again, what's the minister's name again? Was it McDougall?
Miles McDougall.
Okay. So, I mean, maybe you should put that up on your website there as well. Of course, you can get that in just by going to the Government of Alberta website there, Minister McDougall, and send him an email. Let him know what you think on this, because it's important. This stuff really, really does matter. My concern is, again, so from the U of L reps, they really seem to honestly believe this, that your views are quote unquote disinformation. Okay, so that this is total untruth. Yeah. They believe that you're hateful, and they also believe that your views are unacceptable. Reminds me of the Freedom Convoy. Okay, the truckers' protest there. So I think questions our universities and students and anyone should be asking is, what qualifies as disinformation, right? And who determines what disinformation is? Again, as and some people might say, well, you're saying you're the foremost. Well, okay, that's I guess debatable. Are you the foremost? Maybe, maybe not. But you are very, very well informed on the Indian residential school situation. That's obvious. You look at the materials you have. It's just there. You present the facts, and people sometimes have trouble with facts. Okay. Yeah. Truth should be an important part of this whole debate here. If you're going to say this is disinformation, then let's present exactly what parts of your presentation, of your views, are disinformation and why. What kind of evidence do you have on the other side that would clearly point out why your views are incorrect?
Yes, and they never do that, and that's why they got to be sued. So the worst perpetrators of this is the University of Lethbridge Faculty Association. It's a union. Patrick Wilson is one of the main figures. He's the head of the Gender Equity and Diversity Committee. The University of Lethbridge Faculty Association put a post on their website, it's probably still there, which was absolutely defamatory. Said that Tony Hall and I were lying, that we were doing all these malicious things. They provided no evidence, not one shred of evidence for what they were saying. That's defamation. And if they do not retract what they've said on that post, I am going to sue them. Okay. And I have got a lawyer from Vancouver who's going to help me with this.
All right. Be interesting to see what happens with that. And again, the other question we should ask is, how are we defining hate, right? Does it mean any view that's contrary to the current narrative? That's... If you disagree, this qualifies as hate. If you hurt my feelings, that's hateful. Really?
Yeah. Anything that they don't like, that's what they call hate. And again, hate speech is an actual legal term here. I personally don't think that hate speech should be illegal because I can see how it can be abused. And I think people should be able to express hatred as long as they're not threatening people and so on. But hate is... opening up a group to detestation and vilification to make that person seem like that they are not deserving of the protections of the law. That is what we're talking about here. And all I'm saying is that there's no evidence for the remains of 215 children being confirmed at the Kamloops Indian Residential School. And because this 215 claim is the major piece of evidence for why Canada is a genocidal country, there doesn't seem to be a lot of evidence to support this kind of this.
Yeah. Again, how many millions of dollars were given to the to the folks there in Kamloops to, I guess, dig up the graves, whatever it takes to prove your claims. And here we are. I'm not sure what is it, 4 or 5 years later, something like that, and nothing. Zippo. It doesn't look very likely that those claims are substantiated. And again, it's just. Where do you go from here, right? Truth needs to come out one way or the other, and the truth is not hateful. People make mistakes. Okay, we can forgive mistakes, that sort of thing, whatever. Let's be kind to one another, and if there are bodies there, I'd want to know about it, and I think most of the public would as well. But if there are no bodies there, then we also need to know the facts. So let's get it out there. Another question I think we need to ask is, why should a particular point of view be deemed unacceptable?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, well, the whole point of an academic institution is to determine whether ideas are true, first of all, but then also to examine the ethical and moral kinds of dimensions. And, what we find is we have often views that have quite a lot of complexity to them that will need to be examined. And we're not doing that. Like, this is kind of the very, very sad situation. And Tony Hall, who's a professor emeritus, who I was having the event with on February 4th, we were having a big discussion about this last night where we were saying it used to just be taken for granted that as an academic, you would sit down with people that you disagreed with to try to figure out the validity of the different positions. And that's not happening at all anymore, because it's decided before the fact. And in our academic parlance, it's called a prescribed doctrine, which is a predetermined idea about what things are about and whether they are, makes these determinations. You're not. It's in collective agreements. You're not supposed to have prescribed doctrines imposed upon faculty and students.
That's just, it should be self-evident that this is necessary, what you're just describing here. Wow. So are there any universities, by the way, that are okay with you engaging the students on campus?
No, not yet. So this has got to change. I'm hoping we can do it at the University of Lethbridge. So all eyes on the University of Lethbridge, because they are a 3-time violator of these things. They have been openly hostile to open discussion. That university has been completely captured by activism, and the government can do something about it.
Yeah.
The government has the power to do it. They have the free speech policy that they imposed in 2019. Why is Miles McDougall not forcing the University of Lethbridge to hold this event? If we were able to get that done, it would just be an immense benefit for all the citizens of Alberta to see how you actually can have constructive disagreement at a university. And we haven't had that happen yet because of the capturing of our institutions by equity, diversity, and inclusion ideology.
This needs to happen. I agree with that, because we're basically devaluing fellow human beings simply because they have a different viewpoint than we do. That needs to stop if we want to have a healthy society. If, we want to live in a society where people can disagree and still be friends at the end of the day. Rather, this kind of top-down policy we're seeing here from the University of Lethbridge and other universities, most universities it seems, is actually divisive. I'm out of time here. Francis, I really appreciate what you're doing here, getting our attention on this. So Dr. Francis Widdowson and the website wokeacademy.info. Thanks so much, Francis.
It was my pleasure.
All right, thanks for watching. You can watch past episodes at WizeUp.ca, and you can email me, paul@WizeUp.ca.